We're happy that Chris Burgess could join us. Chris has been doing SDR work for several years in technology, including virtualization, cybersecurity, and infrastructure analytics. He joined Iron 9 months ago with express purpose of defining the SDR function, building a team. He now manages a team of 5 SDRs and is currently implementing outbound strategies to complement the existing inbound process. That's a mouthful, but it's all true. Wow. Good stuff. Chris.
I didn't misspell any of that.
Jake Biscar was initially an SDR at TalkDesk and eventually moved to SDR manager during his time at TalkDesk. The company went from 3 million to 10 million in ARR with 6 SDRs. Now Jake is managing and implementing the outbound process at Rainforest QA, where you have 6 SDRs on the team?
6 going on 7.
7 on Monday.
And I wrote all that myself.
Boom. Not too many spelling errors either. Great. Good to have you, Jake. Big round of applause, Jake. So, the first question is, as a hiring manager, what do you guys look for in a successful SDR? What are the things that you're looking at when you hire an SDR?
Wow, it's a great question. The first thing I'm looking for really is curiosity. So like, what kind of questions are they asking me? Are those questions relevant to what we're selling? Are those questions relevant to their success at the company? Like, are they very curious as to like the success of all the SDRs on the team? Or are they curious as to like the health benefits? Because I mean, yeah, that's important, but first we got to get past the point of like what really interests you about the opportunity. And if you're interested about the company and like the overall health of the company, that's what's going to create a successful SDR rather than the SDR that's sort of interested in just sort of like the gimmicky, the small stuff. How much do you get paid for an SQO or an SQL or whatever you guys call it? I really want them to be interested in the health of the company, the vibe of the SDR team, the culture. So really the questions, the curiosity, what's driving those questions.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I say being inquisitive is really important, and also asking the right kinds of questions. I like an SDR to just be very genuine with me. There's a lot of questions that can come up in an interview that maybe aren't very pertinent to the role, the challenges that they're going to have in the role. I like questions like, what SDRs are currently doing to be successful in the role? What SDRs are maybe hitting challenges? What are those challenges? How are you as a manager overcoming those challenges with the SDR? Just a genuine conversation. Yeah, I would say being inquisitive, being genuine, and asking the right questions.
Nice. I've always found that you cannot teach passion, and you cannot teach heart. There's lots of stuff that you can coach. It's very hard to coach curiosity. It's very hard to coach intellect and a thoughtful conversation. And when we look for SDRs, we look for folks that can grow with the organization as well. Like, we're not just trying to find somebody that can go and generate 10 outbound SQOs a month and just get that cranking. I mean, that's a part of it, but we're really looking for people that can grow within the organization. So heart and thoughtfulness and curiosity are a few really cool things to look for as well, which you guys kind of noted. So when you get SDRs on board, right? So you get the right SDR. How do you go about adding value, and what is it that you need to do to kind of like unlock that potential? How do you help folks be successful in the role?
I think a lot of it is, if you've got a great SDR team already, you've got some top performers, showing them what good looks like, having them pair up with those guys. I like to get SDRs on the phone by week 2, and a lot of people have said that may be a little bit too fast, but I feel like inside of a week, you can learn the product, and that's, I guess, a third of what you need to know. Inside of a week, you can learn the process and how your cadence is supposed to look and what your messaging should be. You're sitting down with marketing, you're sitting down with the success team, you're learning a lot. That other third comes from being on the phone. So, it's important whenever we're interviewing and bringing them on board that we're getting the right kind of people that don't have that fear, are willing to get on that phone. But then also pairing them up with people they can listen to what a successful call sounds like, what kinds of qualifying questions are the right ones, how to have a good conversation, and how to hand that off.
Follow-up question. Do you feel like there's some is there hesitancy from an SDR to get on the phone because they're going to screw it up, or they're going to screw up a lead, or they're going to, like, who as an SDR has ever felt like, shit, I don't want to get on the phone because if I mess this up, this is not going to be good, right? There's like some fear there, even I do, right? I'm like, I don't want to screw up this customer call. So what do you say to that?
I get on the call and screw it up for them.
Yeah, nice, awesome. No, but
I
that's
try not
actually,
to. Look, if you're going to make, if I'm going to sit down with a new hire and I'm going to make $80 in front of them, I'm going to have a bunch of conversations. Chances are I'm probably going to have a bad one or two, and that empowers them. I think that relaxes them a bit.
Yeah, is anybody fearful about is anybody here fearful about like getting on the phone and like screwing up? Shouldn't be. Shouldn't be.
I'm curious to know who's in the call-heavy SDR organization. Just by a show of hands. Like, are you making more than 20 calls a day?
Wow.
And then who's making under 20 calls a day?
Huh.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty interesting too. So we're not as call-heavy, it sounds like. And I'm not sure if we do that for the reason of nerves, if we're afraid to sort of like rub someone the wrong way as we're reaching out to like VPs of engineering and CTOs, or if it's just like, are there that many quality calls to be made in the day? So I share the sentiment of, phones are a great avenue, and it's a great way to have a conversation. And to answer the question, it's a great way to train. It's a great way to learn the product. But what kind of conversations are you having? Like, how many call trees are you diving through nonstop all day? Could that time be spent better listening to a demo call? Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't make those choices, but I guess I kind of do, but not for you guys. Not for you guys. So my point is that how are you leveraging your time talking to customers or talking to prospective customers? Are you listening to the value prop, or are you trying to give the value prop? And so I think if there's a good mix between that, then that's a good training program. And I think some enablement comes from that as well. But yeah, it's tough. You gotta sort of like take the wins with the losses. You gotta hit the phone some days. You gotta hop on demos some days. And if there's a good mix between that, I think that's where you really find the good training programs and the good empowerment between SDRs to eventually move to the AE position, because it's all about the conversations that you're having or listening to.
Any tips to get over those nerves? Any tips to, it's tough even in sales. You're getting on the phone, you're getting on demos all day. It's stressful stuff. Have you guys found anything that works to just kind of like get psyched up for a call, or get psyched up to do your 10 or 20 dials or whatever folks are doing?
I had a glass of white wine earlier and I'm feeling pretty good. But I mean, if you do it in a group, that's been helping us recently. It's fun to hear people mess up, and it's fun to hear them do well. Either way, so that's what we do. But
yeah, I know probably more than half of you hate the word role playing, but we do a little bit of it. But specifically, we do it where I am the SDR, and they're the worst, most terrible prospects you can possibly imagine. That helps to break the ice and get them to see me trying to think quickly on my feet, screwing up, backtracking, making mistakes. So that helps them. But I think every SDR has a different way to overcome that fear, whether it's 10 push-ups or a glass of wine or just picking up the phone and going. Yeah. Everybody has, I think, their own way to overcome that fear, and it's important to know what yours is.
What do SDRs on the team today, or that in your experience, what have the really great ones done to stand out?
Oh man, they sort of just have that personality that people gravitate towards, which I don't know if you can really coach to that. But they're also extremely organized. I think part of being an SDR is just extreme organization. There's one I'm thinking of right now, smiling in the front row. But basically, like separating yourself from the crowd. If you're doing a lot of cold calls, maybe if your call number's high, you can do it that way. If you guys are sending a bunch of emails, if you send out like 100 more emails than somebody in a month, maybe you can do it that way. But where all the meetings are is in the organization, and it's in the follow-up. And so the ones that have that really, really clean workflow, those are the ones that are getting the 2 to 3 extra meetings. And then one thing that I've learned just being here in the last couple months even is how good are you at creating those relationships with the rest of the team, like the AEs, the marketing team, customer success? Can you create those relationships effectively? Because that's going to dictate if you're successful or not as well in way more ways than being organized. You're going to get all kinds of information. Maybe like marketing calls you over to help them with some copy, and then you learn sort of their workflow on how they're writing messaging. Just whatever you're doing, as much as you can integrate into different teams, that's going to be the best way to be effective.
Organization, workflow, integrate into the company. Cool.
Integrations.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's all of that, and to kind of expound on it, being able to source your own answers. So we talked a lot about during the interview process. Jake said, being inquisitive is really important. This is more than just is an SDR inquisitive, and will they be inquisitive on the phone with a prospect and get the right kind of information? It's also internal. If you have questions, you're not afraid to go up to your customer success team. You're not afraid to go to engineering. I've seen SDRs completely fearless on the phone, but they get petrified if they have to go up to somebody in engineering and ask a question, particularly if they've been with the company for a couple of months, because they're like, this engineer is going to see through everything. I don't understand this stuff at all, and there it goes. So being fearless internally, communicating internally, and being inquisitive. Yeah, cool.
Is there inbound lead velocity? Is the real question. If there is, then you definitely got to hire some inbound people. We were in the situation where inbound lead velocity wasn't to the point of sustaining the growth of the business. So Farland, not we, Farland started hiring a bunch of SDRs. And we have a cool product that VPs of engineering and CTOs haven't really heard of, which aligns itself up really well with outbound SDRing. As long as it's thoughtful and it's from like a consultative sales approach, that's where the success comes. Not so much just firing out a bunch of random emails. We're really, really consultative in our approach. So that's
Nice.
that's why we went with outbound rather than inbound.
Chris, what's your take? Because you guys have a lot more inbound, I believe, right?
Yeah, right. Actually, I was when I was brought aboard, I came aboard probably about a month or two after we kind of flipped the marketing switch and leads just started falling from the sky. So we had a lot of inbound leads that warranted ISDRs, and in fact had so many leads that I couldn't even begin to think about OSDR work. So we did that. We continued to onboard. We're a team of 6 now, and we're still working marketing qualified leads, inbound stuff. This also leads into, I guess, the broad topic of this event, which is moving from an SDR into an AE position. And I know that, Morgan, you've probably experienced this, Farland, if you are the first account executive, particularly in a startup community, you join a company as a sales guy and there's not a seasoned SDR team, maybe there's no SDR team, the first thing you're doing is OSDR work. So one of the things that we're starting to implement, partially because obviously there's some success in outbound, and that can't be ignored, but also partially because we owe it to our SDRs that are looking to move into an AE role in the future, to start doing that outbound work and training them how to do that. So,
nice. Yeah, I found that if we're looking at a split between inbound and outbound, I've found that it's always helpful to specialize. The inbound nature of doing outreach is much different than the workflow and the mindset of doing outbound from what I've found. So if we're talking about inbound versus outbound, how should you do that? How should you bifurcate that? As Jake said, it depends on what your situation is with lead flow and what if you can go outbound, but it's usually bifurcated. And a lot of folks will start an inbound, then go outbound. That's traditional Salesforce model, and then will become, A's. So, good question, Morgan.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is it can't just come from the SDR manager. It can't just come from an account executive, but there's definitely some collaboration there. I've had SDRs that have worked with some really great AEs that are encouraging and really kind of want to develop these SDRs. They know what their path is. They're doing that OSDR stuff, but they're also getting on the call, and some AEs might not like this. Some are really cool, and letting the SDR run the discovery call. Farland, I think you mentioned it earlier where an SDR is starting to overqualify on the, well, not overqualify, but further qualify on the front end before you bring in the account executive. That's the stuff that you want to see. And it's also, you know, it's not somebody that's sitting there waiting for it to come to them. That was mentioned. It's somebody that's actively going to get it. So I guess to answer the question, it would be working as an SDR manager with an account executive to identify those characteristics and then developing them.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that you're kind of doing yourself a disservice if you say, if you hit this many SQOs, then you'll get promoted at this point. I think that kind of creates a bit of complacency. We don't have anything really, like we're a young company, you know, so there's only been SDRs here. I think all the SDRs right now, no one's been here longer than like 3 or 4 months that haven't been promoted already to AE. So like that's interesting. So we're going to come up against that here in the next couple of months. We're going to have to try to figure out what actually does make a successful SDR to AE transition in a more concrete sense, rather than just having somebody who's really smart and really good at communicating. Like what sort of process can we put around that? And I think it all comes again back to talking to customers. How much confidence can you build in the SDR team by having those communication lines? Are the leads more valuable than developing the people internally? I don't think so. But I mean, and I don't think Rainforest thinks so either. So
Jake's answer is good. Jake's answer is right, but before Jake, we used to do feats of strength. That was the process to go from SDR to AE. We used to enter what's called the Dragon's Lair, and do the pitch and demo in front of the AEs, which is the worst ever, if you have to role play it, and that's how you know. But that was part of it. We have a semblance of a process to get from AE to SDR. It's definitely not a built-out guidebook, but that's the beauty of being in a startup, is that you can hustle through based on a lot of different factors and not on like this system. You look at a very extreme example like Salesforce. They have a system. Salesforce is an awesome company. I mean, what are they going to do? $2-3 billion in revenue this year? Like, they're incredible. But they have a very manufactured system of here's what your 6-year track looks like to get from, you know, ESB SDR to CSD SDR, you know, and go from there. But it's a great organization, but that's a regimented process. I think that's good. Great. On time. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jake. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
thank you.